Hello friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Danny and today we're gonna look at some weird books and their reviews. I recently have finished a very strange book with Leandra, and we both had such a hard time expressing our thoughts at the end of the book that I wanted to make a video about it. And so while I was trying to process my thoughts on this particular book, which I will tell you about in just a minute, I was scouring Goodreads to try and figure out, and I don't know if you guys do this after you read a book, if you are having a hard time figuring out how you feel about it, sometimes I will go and read reviews. And I really try to come up with some like anchoring thoughts for myself before I do this, so I don't lean one way or another because of someone's review. But I find it helpful to read through reviews because some people are much more eloquent in their language than I am. And I think some people can help me kind of pinpoint what I did and didn't like about a book. So that's what this video is about. I am going to give you guys 4 weird books that I have read and that I have liked for the most part, because I do typically like weird books, but they're very hard to recommend to people. And so this is essentially my way of going through some reviews with you guys, talking about the synopses of these books, and hopefully encouraging you to pick one of them up if you are into weird books. If you're not, maybe it's just a wild ride where you get to hear about all the crazy things that these books make people think, because they're definitely odd. Before I even get started, I want to ask you guys to leave me a recommendation if you are a weird book lover and you have read other books that are kind of fit in this category, because they are kind of hard to find for me. I was scouring Goodreads to try and think of some other, like to create my list for this video, and I only found 4 that maybe 5, but I'm only gonna talk about 4 that I think really fit. And I do think I would like to read more. The book that inspired this video is Annihilation. So this is the book that I just finished, and for now, I'm gonna rate it 3 stars. And I'm rating it 3 stars because I both liked and disliked certain components. I am still very confused about what's happening and the purpose of the book, but I've been told by a couple of people that it's meant to be read, the entire series is meant to be read at once instead of just reading one book individually. So I'm trying to give it a little bit of a benefit of the doubt. And I did really enjoy certain aspects. So if you have never heard of Annihilation, I'll give you a little bit of a synopsis here before we jump into the reviews. Area X is an area that has been kind of separated from normal society, and we don't know much about it as a reader of this book. So the human civilization that does exist has been sending out expeditions to Area X to gain information about Area X. And you don't really know why, you don't really know what's going on in Area X, you don't know really anything. All you know is that you have this group of 4 women, you never learn their names, you just learn their roles. And so you have an anthropologist, a biologist, a psychologist, and a surveyor. And they are sent out on the 12th expedition to Area X to figure out some information. And we know that there have been past expeditions and that some not really great things have happened to those expeditions. So that's kind of the premise of the book. My thoughts before I get to the reviews: I love the atmosphere that this book creates. I love the haziness while we're reading, the unreliable narrator kind of component. She's very clinical, which I do think is some of what I had problems with, because there were some things in the story that I don't think should have been very clinical. But I think that might just have been a character trait of hers, that's just how she was throughout the entire book and throughout her entire life. But it has a way of separating you from the storyline. You definitely feel like an observer of the story, not an active contributor, I guess. The book doesn't answer a lot of questions. It definitely brings up a lot of questions as we continue on the story. And the book is also very short, so that's why I'm not giving you a ton of details. Also, I don't know that the details would make sense even if I did give them to you, but there aren't a lot of conclusions being drawn throughout this book. And I don't know if they will be eventually within the original trilogy that was published or not, but I guess we'll find out. So I'm going to read you guys some reviews from Goodreads, and I will also post them up on the screen so you guys can kind of read through them. I am not going to post the names of people unless it's a good review, because I don't want anyone like going after these people. Please do not go on a Goodreads and like hunt down these bad reviews. I mean, this is everyone's opinion, and for the ones that I'm going to post, or the ones that I'm going to talk about, they're not like horrible reviews, but I am going to look at a 5-star review, a 3-star review, and a 1-star review, and then talk through kind of the components that I really liked about the review, and then maybe some things that I disagree with. So the first review is from Becca in the Books, and it just says, I absolutely love this, but I literally have no idea what's going on. Same. I mean, I can't say that I absolutely loved it, because there were some components that I didn't like, but I definitely feel like I don't know what's going on. And so I like the fact that this is a 5-star review, and Becca is admitting that she doesn't really know what's going on. And then we go to the 3-star review, which is by Gabby Reads, and it says, I feel like before I read this, I really didn't understand what this book was about. And after reading this, I still don't feel like I know what this book is about. I just think it's so, it is, this might be like a study on reviewing as well, because I think it's fascinating that people can have the exact same expression in their review, but one of them gave it 5 stars and one of them gave it 3 stars. I love the fact that books are so subjective, and we can love and hate books for the exact same reasons. To continue on with Gabby's review, it says, this book was strange. It had this creepy, eerie atmosphere that made me continue reading, which is one of the reasons that I really did continue to push through. The writing is beautiful, and the atmosphere is very eerie and hazy, which I do find I love in books. And so if a weird book has a great atmosphere, it's going to be my jam. And then we have a 1-star review. So this says, oh dear, if I give you the synopsis of this book, it's going to sound so interesting. A biologist joins an expedition to the mysterious Area X to determine what happened to the previous expeditions and why those who do return are so changed. I mean, come on, that sounds good to you, right? Instead, it reads like someone telling you this very long and very complicated dream they had, wherein they may have been on LSD or another hallucinogenic, and they think it's the most fascinating thing ever, but you just want them to get to the point because there has to be one, right? I mean, why else would this person be telling you their dream unless it has some salient point? But no, like all dreams, they lose something in the retelling and are also only interesting to the person that actually had the dream. So this book is like someone you barely know coming up to you and explaining in great detail a dream that they had last night. I resonate with this. This is a 1-star review, so I don't resonate with that. I did like the book more than that, but it definitely did feel a little bit like a fever dream. Like I didn't really know what was real and what wasn't real. But I liked that about the book. I liked to be confused. I like to have those questions. I do think I would have preferred to have more answers and maybe more direction in the book overall. But yeah, I agree with this review, even though it's 1 star. Another review I really liked was this 3-star review that just says, I'm not sure how I feel about this. It was good, but not really. I think at the very end of reading Annihilation, I told Leandra, I can't tell if I'm having a good time. And that's kind of still how my brain is at this moment. Now, I do think that this 5-star review, so I'll end it on a good note, because I do think overall my feelings toward this book are positive, and so I am going to continue with the series because I do kind of want to know what happens. But this person says, silence creates its own violence. My initial reaction, but what does it mean? And I'm still sitting here wondering and pondering. This novel was spectacular in every aspect. The best books are those that keep the secrets to themselves, those that don't tell you everything and that make you desperate for the information that you will not receive. It's the mystery that keeps one interested, the depths that you want to explore. They make your fingers tremble because you want to touch everything, know the answers to every question. You want the silver platter, a glass filled with red wine, and a bowl with all the unanswered riddles. But the author would rather let you die of thirst than serve them to you. And I think that is the perfect description of this book. So from that, I hope that you can kind of get a taste for whether or not Annihilation would be for you, because I do think that those reviews kind of sum up my feelings on the book, even though they're a mix of 5 stars, 3 stars, and 1 stars. The next book that I'm going to talk to you guys about is Catherine House. And I rated Catherine House a 4.5 star when I read it. And it is a book that has lived in my memory and lived rent-free in my mind for the couple of years that it's been since I've read it. And I really do want to reread it at some point in time. And this book is very polarizing. Actually, I think all of these books are very polarizing on Goodreads. A lot of people, this is also a debut novel, which I am impressed by. I know a lot of people were not, but that's okay. So if you've never heard of Catherine House, you are in a college-esque environment. It's a very prestigious school called Catherine House that gives their students a free education, free room and board, free tuition, like everything is free, but the caveat is that they have to come to this school and stay for 3 years. They are not allowed to leave. They are not allowed to contact their families. They're not allowed to have cell phones. They're not allowed any communication with the outside world. They essentially give up 3 years of their life to live at Catherine House. And you can imagine that some kind of weird things are going on at Catherine House. And so you try and figure out what they are. You follow a main character. Her name is Inez, I believe. And I freaking loved the atmosphere of this book. This is another book, it's very meandering. It is not fast-paced at all. It is very, very slow-paced. And the main character grows in apathy as the storyline continues. And I think you'll see in some of the reviews that I'm going to talk about how this is brought up. A lot of people do not like the main character and are irritated by the main character's personality and decisions. And I found it fascinating to follow someone who kind of is descending into just not caring and just kind of going along with these things that are happening. And yeah, I found it intriguing. One of the first reviews that I ran across was a 5-star review that just says, "What the heck was that?" And I will say that I saw this a lot as I was scrolling through. There were a lot of people that were just like, what did I just read? I don't understand what I just read. And I do get that vibe from Catherine House. I do, however, think that this book gives more answers than like Annihilation or some of the other books that I'm going to mention on this list. But I see that overarching theme, and I love the fact that someone can say, "What the heck was that?" and still give this book 5 stars. I just think it speaks to how well written it was and how intriguing some of the things that happen in the book are. The next review is a 3-star review, and it says, "This book would be enjoyed by people who like atmospheric gothic stories and are okay with there not being a lot of plot. It doesn't seek to answer questions or resolve mysteries, but perhaps show the type of lost and empty people vulnerable to cults. The main character experiences a lot of emotional detachment and disassociation, which adds to the eerie atmosphere and a drowsy sense of feeling." So I like the fact that this review mentioned the lost and empty people who are vulnerable to cults, because this book does definitely take into consideration people who have or who do not have a lot of connection in their life and how those people can be taken advantage of by entities or people in their lives. And I really liked that deep dive of the different characters that we do see in the book. We only follow one main character, but even the backstories that we get of some of the other characters that are in the book, you can see how disconnected they were from their actual lives. And it's nice to just have a little bit of social commentary on how society in general sometimes does take advantage of those people and entities, other people, businesses, cults take advantage of people who don't have anyone to stand up for their needs. This next is a 1-star review, and I'm not going to read all of it. I just want to read a little piece that I think speaks back to the apathy of the main character. So this says, "Yes, it was atmospheric. Yes, I was intrigued by the idea taking place at a boarding school, but this book was so boring. The main character was insufferable and did a lot of things that didn't make sense. I don't understand what Thomas intended by creating such a frustrating character. At the beginning, I thought I would be able to get used to her, but it just got worse. She seemed so out of it, almost like she was drunk the entire book, and then it made me feel like I was reading the book in a haze. She didn't really care about anything, which made me feel like I couldn't care about anything. So this is once again, I think, really interesting that this is something I really liked about the book. The fact that I did feel like I was reading in a haze and that I didn't really understand what was going on, and the main character didn't care about anything, while I was like screaming at her to care, because you could see or you could feel like the imminent danger that's happening around her, and she just doesn't care about it. And I liked that, whereas this person didn't. And so this is one of the reasons I really do like to read reviews, because if I had seen this in a review prior to reading Catherine House, it would have made me want to pick it up, because I like the component of being confused as you read. I like having to figure out, am I being like given the 100% truth, or is there a reason that this is happening? Is there going to be a reveal later on that I need to know about, or are we just supposed to not understand what's happening? I like it. We'll end with a 5-star review, and what I really liked about this review is the comment about how this book is quietly wild. I think that that is a perfect description of Catherine House. And so they go on to say that this is indeed a slow burn. Even the climax is a more sinister simmer than an explosive denouement. But like all solid Gothic, it boasts of an off-the-charts sense of atmosphere and setting. It was so quiet. It's very meandering, slow-paced. We don't have a lot of action going on, and there's not like in-your-face things that are happening, but there are still things that are happening that make your senses scream at you that something is wrong, something's not right, and we should care about what's happening. And that's one of the components I really enjoyed about Catherine House. The next weird book that I'm talking to you guys about is Death in Her Hands, and I've talked about this recently on my channel. This book is very strange, and I don't even know how I would recommend this book to anyone. It's about an elderly woman, I think she's 73, and she's walking through the woods around her house, and she finds a note. And the note tells her that there is a person who I believe's name was Magda, buried there, and they would never find her body, and they would never figure out who killed her. And you would think, by the description of the story, or by the description of the title, that she would be helping solve this mystery. And she does, but it's in her head. So the entire book is really just her trying to figure out and reason within her head what happened to this person. And I freaking loved it. I totally understand why people would not, because this book doesn't really have a conclusion. It's not really meant to answer questions, but it focuses on a couple of things that I've really enjoyed. And a couple of these things are highlighted in the reviews. So we're gonna start with a 5-star review. And this one says, a woman come undone in the wilderness, haunted by many ghosts, pursued by a mystery. The mind is a terrible, wonderful thing. So one of the pieces, because of the fact that you are in this woman's mind throughout this book, that I really enjoyed is the turmoil and the twistiness of the human mind and where it can lead you and why. And that's also said in another, let me see if I can find the other review. So another 5-star review says, Vesta, who's the main character, is far from a reliable narrator. So her inner monologue of finding a clue that she believes to be a murder is fraught with conflict, both vague and crystal clear interpretations of data, and the kind of scattered thinking that might indicate dementia. That's also something that I was contemplating throughout reading that entire book was, is this a story of an elderly lady who is losing her mental capacities? Or is it real? You're not given the answer. But the entire time you're contemplating whether or not this woman needs help or she needs to go for help. One or the other. But I really enjoyed that aspect of it. Next, a 3-star review. It says, this is a fever dream novel on isolation and unsettling power of imagination, which once again, I do think that also plays into the fact that this is an elderly lady. She's living, she doesn't have a lot of friends, and so she is very isolated. And so you do start to think whether or not it is her own mental faculties that are causing her to have these thoughts and go down this path, or it is because there are actually things in her life that she knows that have like clues that are real. Are the clues real or are they not? Another review, which is a 1-star review, it says it's exhausting to read because we're stuck in the head of a grouchy, fatphobic, misogynistic old woman who can't stop fixating on a made-up murder that she created. The only thing I found interesting about this book was that you couldn't actually tell what was real and what wasn't. And so I do think that this character, and one of the other reviews also mentioned this, that the main character is not likable. And I don't think she's intended to be. And she is misogynistic and she is fatphobic. Like there's no question about it. She is those things, and it does take place it does take part of her story in the book. And I know that you can argue one way or the other whether or not it should be in the book or out of the book. I'm not here to argue that point, but I do think that it takes an author. I don't have to like my main characters, but it is more difficult for me to like a book if I don't like a main character. So I think that the author has more obstacles to overcome if I am not enjoying the main character, or if the main character is somehow unlikable. And I do think that Ottessa, is it Moshfegh, I think is how you pronounce their last name, I think that this author does this well. I did not particularly enjoy Vesta's character, but I did enjoy the exploration of her mind and why she thinks the things that she does. And I think I think it was a really fascinating look into the mental capacity, especially of someone elderly, and perhaps what prejudice, bias they have, but also what prejudice and bias that people have against her because she's elderly. So yeah, I enjoyed this book. I definitely know it's not for everybody, but it is what it is. The last book that I have for you guys is Vita Nostra. And this book I rated 4 stars. I do not remember a ton. This book was very confusing for me, and you'll see that in some of the reviews that I'm gonna share with you guys that I found amusing. But you start out with a girl whose name is Sasha, and she's approached by a weird man on vacation. I think she's on vacation, and he gives her these very odd tasks. Like, I'm not going to give them in the correct order, but one of them is like literally peeing, like going for a run and then peeing in the bush in the middle of an open area where people might see her. I think the one where she was on vacation, she had to like go out in the middle of the night and get naked and run into the ocean. And if she doesn't do these things, someone in her life is going to have something bad happen to her or happen to them. And that's how the book starts. Eventually the book gets to the fact that she goes to a magical school, and it's a wild ride. And I'm still not sure I fully understand exactly what happened. I don't know that I'm supposed to understand fully what happened. It is a book that the more I read reviews on it, the more I wanted to go back and reread, because I do remember there were just certain things that were very fascinating that I would like to go and take a deeper look at. I have the physical copy, and I didn't annotate it the first time I read it, but I should, because I think that there's a lot of little tiny details that I might have overlooked in the first reading. It's a very fascinating book. So I wanted to share, I think this is a 1-star review with you guys that I found hilarious, because I think it actually intrigues me, even though this person rated it a 1 star. So this says, Conjunction junction, what's your function? How can I rate a book when I'm still trying to figure out what happened? What if your Hogwarts magic superpower is transforming into an adverb, a pronoun, an article, etc.? And I think that describes some of what happens in this book very accurately, and I love it. I think that it is a very interesting look into language. And so if you are someone who enjoys linguistics, I think that this book might intrigue you. It might also frustrate you. But yeah, when I found this review, I laughed out loud, because to be honest, so this is a 1-star review, but what this person is indicating, the magical powers and how it relates to language, I think is probably my favorite part of the book. But yeah, I can see why people would get frustrated by it. And then a 3-star review that says, this one, you know. This is one of those books that are extremely readable, they're fluid, and you just go on and on. But the moment I closed it, I was like, huh? Did any of that mean anything at all? And I think that's why I don't remember a lot about this book, because I did enjoy it as I was reading it. I was having a good time. It was weird. It kept my interest. Odd things happen in this book that I could not explain to you. But I think because of all of the oddities, my brain kind of revolted when I finished it, and it was like, nope, we're not remembering details. So I am glad that I own a copy so I can go back and dive into the world again, because I do think that there's a lot that I missed and a lot that I don't remember. I think if I dive back into it, I probably would remember certain things, but this is why, because it does have a lot in it that is very strange. I did also like this 3-star review. It says, if you combined Bunny and Catherine House and then you filtered it through a very Eastern European lens, you'd get Vita Nostra. And I can't say that I have a lot of experience with Eastern European works. This is a translated work. It's Ukrainian. And I do think that that has a little bit of bearing on why I had trouble remembering certain details, because it doesn't follow your typical plot, and it is very odd. It focuses on things that I guess I wouldn't have focused on, but it does very much remind me of the feelings I got when I was reading Catherine House, with more of the complexity and danger, I guess, of Bunny. And then the one I want to leave you guys on, because I just think this is hilarious, and this was not the only review that had this comment, but it says, weird in the best of ways, a bit scary and bizarrely magical. This book somehow captures the experience of what happens to you in college better than anything else I know. And it kind of does. It kind of doesn't. There's a lot of really weird things that definitely did not happen to me in college, so people must be having different experiences, but the fact that you do change, there is like this metamorphosis that you have, right? Whenever you go to college, you become a person, you become an independent person, you change, you come into your own, I guess is what they say. And a lot of times that can be jarring for people, and it can completely change your personality. It can upend your world. And that is kind of a good description of what happens in this book. And so I did like the fact that multiple people do talk about that. And I also liked the fact that that connects back to what I was talking about Catherine House, as far as like higher institutions do have a way of changing their clientele, for better or worse. And so I like the fact that there were 2 books in this list that did kind of connect that way. There was also, just to talk about connections, there was someone that connected Catherine House back to the author of Annihilation. One of the reviews, I didn't put it up on the screen, but I think it's very funny that these books, these odd books that we have, run kind of in the same circles. My hope for this video is that it gives you guys kind of a sneak peek into some of these books without having to pick them up yourselves. If you are not someone who really enjoys odd books, I definitely probably stay away from these. But if you are someone who maybe has enjoyed a weird book or two, but is a little leery, maybe these reviews have given you guys something to kind of grasp onto and think that maybe one of these might be for you. Once again, I want to ask you guys if you have weird book recommendations and or even books that you've heard of that might be quote unquote weird, leave them in the comments down below, because I would love to create a list in the comments that people can go to if they want a weird book recommendation, but also books that I can come to whenever I'm feeling in the mood to pick up something strange and mind-boggling. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have a lovely evening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.